Hi, Tamara. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Leanne. It's great to be here.
Good. I'm so glad you're here. I've been looking forward to our conversation for a while now. You've been doing some really interesting and beautiful work with what you have going on, and I'm really excited to have you here and talk about everything you're doing. We are here talking about empowered divorce, which are
Yes.
two words you don't usually see together, empowered and divorce. So, this is why I think this topic is so interesting because the fact that it's possible to walk through such a difficult time feeling empowered is, I would imagine, a game changer. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about who you are, how you got here, and why divorce is your kind of your expertise, really.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Leanne, for that introduction. We started our projects at around the same time, so I think it's been nice to kind of see each other grow from our seats.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
we've known each other a while, and a few years ago, I guess it's been 5 years ago now, I went through my own divorce, and when I started it, it was anything but empowering. But by the time I went through this entire transformation, it became that way over time. And now it's my mission to guide people to have their own empowering experience so they can get through their divorces, first of all, because of course it's not easy, and emerge on the other side stronger, wiser, and ready for their next chapters.
Yes, that sounds like the ideal scenario, honestly. I haven't personally gone through a divorce. Of course, know people, know friends and family who have. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like one of the most difficult kinds of transitions to go through. For those going through it right now, listening, you know what we're talking about, but can you tell us what that can look like? Like, what are some of the things that divorces usually contain?
Yeah, it is one of the most difficult transitions. For me, it definitely has been that experience, and I've gone through some hard stuff myself. But divorce is no joke. It tears you down to your core, and it is a full life reset, and that's never easy. So, in terms of what it contains, I mean, we've all been through a breakup, I'm sure, but to go through a divorce, it's different because the state gets involved. So not only do you have to heal your broken heart, but you have to do it in one of the most frustrating, time consuming, stressful experiences ever, something that we're never taught. And I'm an attorney. And when I went through a divorce, it still felt just completely unfamiliar to me. So not only do you have to get through the breakup, but you have to deal with this legal matter on top of your already stressful life, on top of dealing with the kids and the finances and the stress and your home and your community and your family. And so it just adds this giant layer of stress to your already stressful life. And so for most people, it is one of the hardest experiences they will go through. But if you can see that there's also an opportunity in it to reimagine and reinvent your life, that gives you some of the fuel that you need to get through it and to get to the other side in a way that feels empowering and in a way that you can return to your authentic self again.
Beautiful. Yeah, the idea that this could be a personal growth journey is an interesting one. And going back a little bit, growing up in the 80s, maybe you had the same experience a lot. I think I might be a little older than you though, but just it was like the season of divorce. There was women back in the workforce realizing they were making their own money, they could do it on their own, and who needs all that extra work anyway, right? And so it was
Right.
like I would say half of my friends' parents got divorced in grammar school and junior
Yeah.
high. And that was an empowering, I could see now in hindsight how empowering that was to take back that control. But it feels like we've reached a different kind of awareness around what empowerment can be in this scenario, that it doesn't have to be gloves on, fighting in the ring, but there could potentially be another side where we're better off as a family. Could you maybe talk about some of the things you've seen around that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is really easy to get through a divorce with anger and bitter bitterness and resentment. You'll see a lot of people have had those divorce experiences. We've seen them as kids and we're seeing them now. That is that is the typical standard divorce. But what I'm trying to help people get through is the kind of divorce that leaves you feeling a little bit more empowered. It's what I think Gwyneth Paltrow coins conscious uncoupling, where you kind of realize that your relationship doesn't fit anymore. Maybe you've gone in different directions. Maybe you were never able to grow together. Or maybe there is something serious like betrayal or heartache or addiction. Whatever the case may be that led you to that decision, or if you're on the receiving end of somebody else's decision, your spouse's decision to divorce, there is a way to find yourself again, to have that forgiveness, that self-compassion, and to get through it in a way that doesn't leave a trail of collateral damage for your children, for your family, for your community. And that's the kind of divorce it's not just a pie in the sky anymore. It really is possible with the right support and the right tools, and especially the right mindset.
Yeah. Can you talk a bit about the mindset aspect of this and the tools aspect? You've developed something really cutting edge, actually, is an app
Yeah.
called Divorce Wave. And it's like you've meshed these seemingly disparate pieces of the legal piece and the internal journey of divorcing and the family aspect and all of the cultural social norms of becoming an uncoupled couple. You've done this genius thing with the app. And what I think is so amazing about that app is it's like this ready-made tool resource right in your hands. Can you talk about the journey of developing that and what that's all about?
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm really excited about the Divorce Wave app because the way I see divorce, there's really three parts. There's the legal part, and that's, attorneys, mediators, coaches. There's the logistical part, the part that means you have to separate accounts, separate households, come up with parenting schedules, deal with your family and your community. And then finally, there's the emotional piece. And up until now, there really wasn't a lot to help anybody through that deep inner work that needs to happen so you can have this empowering and transformative experience. And so Divorce Wave fills that hole. And what it does is it has education and strategy and tips from the experts and all of that so you can actually get through your divorce and the legal aspects of it. But where it really shines and what's unique about it is that it offers what I'm calling waves. And these are guided mindfulness experiences put to really great music to walk you through the emotional aspects of divorce. So when you go through a divorce, there are so many challenges that are just going to be coming at you, from communicating with your ex-spouse who you may not like anymore, to telling your kids about the divorce, to managing all of the paperwork that has you so frustrated. And so for each of these challenges, there's a piece of content on the app. It's a 10 to 15-minute wave. So when you are feeling frustrated or when you're triggered, you take a pause, you put in your earbuds, you listen to the wave, and it walks you through not just the emotional piece, the validation, and how you can deal with the actual challenge itself, but it actually helps you tap into your own intuition and to how you feel about it so you can have these amazing realizations, so you can do that inner work to get you through that challenge and figure out where you want to go next, how you survive it, how you get through it, and how you minimize the conflict and maximize your ability to have a good outcome in your divorce.
Wow, that's really powerful. That's really
I
amazing.
hope so. I
Yeah.
hope so. I put a lot of work into trying to nail all of the challenges that are going to come at you. One of my
Yeah.
favorite waves, for example, is how do I emotionally attach from my spouse? Because in that situation, you might not like your spouse anymore. You might be getting a divorce, but there's still an emotional connection. There's still an attachment. This person was one of the most important people in your life for many years, and now all of a sudden you need to move on. And so there still might be that energetic attachment to this person. So this particular wave walks you through releasing that attachment so you can feel so you can come back to yourself and move on without having that person occupy so much space rent free in your mind day in and day out.
That is so amazing. What a game changer that must be to be able to regulate, because that's what it sounds like to me. I'm a very anxious person and I can let my mind get away from me. And one of the challenges I have when I'm going through tough times is to figure out how to regulate in the moment of the tough time, to not reach for the thing that isn't good for me, like texting a 3-page text to the person that's, you know what I mean? Like the
Exactly.
reactivity of the moment can be so damaging. And so to have a resource, you can maybe bypass that and not.
Absolutely. And that's one of the ones that I call a mini wave. We have on there a 5-minute wave. So when you get that triggering text from your ex, let's say, for example, you dropped off your children 5 minutes late and they send you a text saying they don't have their shoes and you're so selfish and I can't believe you did all of these things, and you just want to pound into that keyboard all of your self-righteous indignation back to them. Of course, we all know that's the wrong thing to do if you want to minimize the conflict. So in the app, if you can remember to pause, right there in the app, there's a 5-minute wave called I just received an angry text from my ex. You put it in your earbuds, you take a beat, it walks you through a short breathing exercise, and then it also guides you into the emotional piece and then gives you a couple of tips of how to respond in a way that neutralizes the conflict. And so when you pull your earbuds out, in that 5 minutes, you have calmed down. You're no longer reactive. You no longer have that amygdala that's firing on autopilot. And now you can respond as your wiser self. And just having that power is a game changer.
I'm just imagining, because as you know, I work in energy as a Reiki practitioner. And so I know that when we shift our energy and when we can find our own center, it actually transmits that way. And so I'm imagining all the ways you can prevent the wave of negativity or the wave of panic or the wave of resentment going out, and instead have the wave of level-headed, direct communication.
Yeah.
I mean, that has got to, and then your kids feel it. Your soon-to-be ex must feel that and be like, what's going on there?
Yeah. And it does feel empowering when you respond in a way that doesn't get that trigger or that angry vitriol back from your ex,
Yeah.
or when you respond in a way that kind of just it shows them that you can no longer be hooked. Even if you have somebody extremely high conflict and difficult on the other side, it just takes one person to shift that dynamic. And if they start to learn that they can't hook you, well, I don't want to say it, but you kind of win. That is a win when you feel like, okay, I set this boundary and I was able to follow it, and my ex couldn't hook me into this conflict anymore. And it does start to change the dynamic, no matter how high conflict your ex might be.
Yeah. Beautiful. So you've talked a little bit about what that empowerment looks like. Can you expand on that a little bit, on like what are the other ways that you are helping people utilize empowerment? Calming down is a big one, but
Right.
what are other aspects of that are
Sure.
finding help?
Yeah. So I am a personal divorce consultant. And then I also have the app, which appeals to a larger audience. And one of the other things that we do, both in my practice and in the app, is to empower people to manage their own divorces. So a lot of times people think that they hire an attorney and that attorney is just going to take over everything for them and get them through everything they need to get through. What they don't often understand is that the attorney gets paid to fight. And the bigger the conflict, the more the attorney makes. And so they're not always as motivated to communicate in a way that shows that you want to be peaceful, that you're not looking for the fight. And so it really is about me informing and empowering my clients to manage their own divorces, to be the CEO of their divorce, if you will. And what that looks like is educating themselves on the options, making sure they know what their best option is, whether it's settlement negotiation, mediation, generating creative ideas to reach that settlement, because you really don't want to get to a trial. Almost 95% of cases settle before trial. So chances are good you're going to reach some kind of settlement. How you get there, how fast you get there, how efficiently you get there, and how inexpensively you get there really is up to you. And so that's the part that I really love to instruct my clients on, which is how they manage their own divorces so they're not stuck for 5 years. And then the last thing I'll say is the other thing that I try to give them permission to do is to envision and start planning for their next chapter from the very beginning. Because when you are going through something so challenging like divorce, you feel really stuck. You feel like the endless loops in your head are just tearing you down day by day. And so if you can redirect some of that energy into envisioning and planning and manifesting, if you will, what's next for you, that gives you the fuel that you need and the energy that you need to get through the really challenging parts. So if you can keep that vision in your head and start to take action that only aligns with that vision, that's your North Star. And it walks you through the entire process until you get there.
Yeah, beautiful. Wow. That's such a game changer. So if somebody listening right now has not asked for or been asked for a divorce, but they're considering it,
yeah,
what's your best advice for that person in terms of like what they should consider before taking that first step? And then how do we know if we're supposed to call the lawyer or download an app or call a mediator? Like what are the indicators of what's best in a situation?
Yeah. Well, of course, there's no right way to do everything. And it all depends on somebody's situation. If they're in an unsafe relationship, of course, they need to move quickly and to get the help they need quickly, whether that's legal help for a restraining order. So if they're in something unsafe, you need to move a little bit quickly. But if you're just kind of in a relationship that's going south, you're not happy anymore, you're not connected, or if you feel like a relationship it's on its way out and you think that divorce might be asked of you pretty soon, I think the most important thing that you can do is to kind of get quiet and to ask yourself the tough questions. Have I tried everything? Have I done the work on myself? Is there anything left to try? And if the answer there is no, and you really need to hold up the mirror to make sure that, yes, the answer there is no, that there's nothing that you can do to fix this relationship, well, then it's time to start preparing, and it's time to educate yourself on what's coming for you. It's time to start saving a little bit of money because you don't know what's going to happen with the finances if conflict arises. There's a lot of horror stories about feeling like you don't have control of the finances, especially for stay-at-home moms and women who might not have control of the family finances. So there's planning that you need to do. You need to make sure that you get your ducks in a row before you drop that hammer if you're the one deciding to divorce. And if you're the one that has been asked for a divorce, again, this process is similar. Educate yourself on the process, ask yourself the tough questions. Is there a possibility that we can mediate this? Is there a possibility that we can get to a settlement, or am I really gearing up for a fight? And an attorney, if a fight is what is going to happen for you, sometimes you can't avoid an attorney. But for the most part, many, many, many divorces, the majority of divorces get along just fine without an attorney. And so there are ways to get through it if you're willing to take charge and you're willing to get the education, the support, and the help you need. There are ways to get through it without an attorney. And that usually gives you one of the best chances to have a family that's intact and not so disjointed on the other side. Because if children are involved, that's the number one goal for all of us, right? To make sure that we protect them so that they have their childhood. We don't want them to have a divorce-centered childhood. We don't want to put them in the middle. And so making sure we have all of those ducks in a row before we go down this path is really important. And so one of my best pieces of advice is to either download the Divorce Wave app, because that's kind of a coach in your pocket. It gives you all of the education and the preparation that you need. And if you have the resource, hiring a divorce coach or a divorce consultant is really a great thing to do. They're usually much cheaper than an attorney, and they will let you know what you can expect. what finances and paperwork you need to get in order, what your potential strategy might be, how to assemble your team if you have the resources to do so, what other resources, self-help resources might be out there for you. There's a lot of good self-help resources now like Hello Divorce and divorce.com, where you can get divorced on your own without the use of attorneys, and they handle the paperwork for you. So depending on how complicated your estate is, if it's just a house, you can probably get through it on your own. If you have complicated businesses, 401k plans, stock options, those kind of things, or there's a lot of conflict, you might need additional help from financial professionals, from divorce professionals like an attorney. But really, having a divorce coach kind of give you the field of options and to give you some places where you can figure out what's right for you, that's really a great first step.
Yeah. Yeah, to have the guide, because it's got to be, a really big learning curve to
It is.
to go through that. Yeah. I love that you were talking about the first step is getting quiet. We talk a lot about that on this podcast. And I'm not surprised because if we're not in alignment with ourselves, like if we're dysregulated or we're confused or we're feeling disempowered, then we can't really trust that the actions we're taking, the words we're speaking, or what we're even thinking is reliable because it's often attached to emotion, and emotion is transient.
Yeah.
And so I love that you are recommending getting quiet, because in the quiet, you can calm your emotions and get back in alignment with yourself, and then have a clearer mind to work with your clearer emotions. I'm wondering if you can paint a picture of with a little bit of hope that that even though divorce has all of the challenges, and it can go on, it's not always quick. What are some of the things that you've personally found, or that some of your clients have found, about being on the other side especially when they've walked through it with integrity and this more empowered way of thinking about the process?
So to start with the first part of your question, getting quiet is so important because going through a divorce is one of the scariest things you can do. And of course, we don't make our best decisions when we're operating under fear. And so finding the information that you need and managing that fear is one of the most important things. And making sure that you're doing that throughout the process.
Yeah.
On the other side of divorce, it's hard for me because I am divorced and I can safely say that I'm the happiest I've ever been. But that almost makes me sound like a proponent of divorce. And I don't want to be a proponent of divorce. I'm not in favor of divorce necessarily. I don't think all marriages should end in divorce, of course. But for a lot of us, and almost most of us, in my experience, who are on the other side of this, rarely will you see somebody say that they regretted getting divorced because they knew. By the time you get to this point, you know. And chances are good you've been avoiding this truth for a long time. So that being said, if you are on the other side of divorce, what you can expect is a return to yourself and self-compassion, self-acceptance, self-love, finding out who you are again. If you're like me, and most of us who got to that point of divorce, we've given up pieces of ourselves along the way. We've sacrificed so much for our families, for our relationships, for our marriage, for our community, that we've left pieces of ourselves along the way. The going through that process of divorce collects those pieces. It brings you back to yourself. And now you're solo again. And so you just have you to rely on. You get to decide, what do I want in life? Who do I want to be? Who am I? Where was that girl who used to have fun 20 years ago? Can I bring her back? 100%. The answer to all of that is yes, you can find that person again. And chances are pretty good you're going to start really liking that person. Of course, you have to get through the difficult parts. But after a while, you start to come out of that divorce fog and you really start feeling like yourself again. I remember one really heartbreaking but amazing day for me. And I got divorced during the pandemic, so I had a lot of alone time. But there was a day when my kids were with their dad And I was sitting outside eating lunch by myself. And I looked down at my food and I realized for the first time that I was eating slowly, that I was chewing my food, that I was actually tasting it and enjoying it. And I just started crying because I realized when I was married, how fast I wanted to get through a meal just so I could do the dishes and be done with my chores. How fast I wanted to leave the table because being there was uncomfortable, because I knew my life was not in alignment. And so I cut off my own hunger and my own food, basic needs. I just stopped connecting with basic things like food, pleasure, sleep, rest. And that was a life-changing day for me to realize how lost I was. But in that moment, I also realized that I could find myself again. And it starts with the basics. It starts with spending some time alone, enjoying your food again, taking a walk, with or without music, playing with your animals, sleeping outside for a nap, enjoying the sunshine. All of those things I started to enjoy and appreciate again. And of course, I know one of your near and dear favorites, nature, getting out in nature and connecting with nature again. One of the beauties of joint custody is that you actually have time to do these things again. And it's an amazing opportunity to reconnect with who you were and also who you are now and who you want to be tomorrow.
Yeah, beautiful. Woo! I'm standing ovation for that explanation. I love it. Yeah, I love it what you said about not being, an advocate for divorce. But what I'm hearing from you is more that you're an advocate for a whole life, however that needs to come about. Sometimes that's divorce. I know when I went on my journey to reclaim my life, the thing that I was considering was that I could no longer operate the way I used to. I had gotten married as a 32-year-old woman, and I had come into midlife as somebody very different. And I'd come into my 40s as somebody very different. Every couple of years, I was somebody different. Every time I had a baby, I was somebody different. And I think a lot of times we don't give ourselves enough space to evolve and want different things.
Yeah.
And those those different things may be a different life. They may just be a different version of the life you already have. And that was my experience. I was ready for divorce to be an option. I was ready for that to be an option because I didn't know. But I'm kind of the story where it didn't end up that way. Sometimes it does end up that way. And I want to destigmatize that divorce is always bad, that divorce is a failure. Because a lot of times, and this is the point of empowered divorce, it's also the point of empowered living, is that if you choose to stay, it also isn't disempowering. It can be extremely empowering, like it was for me, to stay, because I was changing so much, everything around me started changing. And I know that not everybody has that husband that's like, wait, I don't want to lose this. Let me make some changes myself. I ended up having that scenario. But when that isn't the case, and that the separation is the best route, it isn't a failure. It is really an empowering way of getting back a whole life, no matter what the outcome is. Can you talk a little bit about that? I feel like I preached a little bit there, but it feels like it's more about a whole life as opposed to having it have to involve divorce or not. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. I think it really is about reconnecting with yourself and figuring out, okay, I'm this person now. I've changed and here I am and this is what I want. And if you have a partner like you do, Leanne, that can grow with you and can meet you where you're at and say, okay, I see you. Yeah, things are different. We're struggling, but I'm with you. I'm still with you. If you can have that partner, well, then of course you don't need to get divorced and you can continue to grow and work together when these midlife seasonal shifts start to happen. If you don't have a partner that you can continue to grow with, or for whatever reason it's just not working anymore, and I almost can see it as it's a compassionate release for both of you, because there's so much resentment that builds up. There's so much disconnect and loneliness. I think it's so lonely to sleep next to somebody that you can't connect with. It's almost lonelier than being by yourself. And so for me and for my ex, it was almost a compassionate ending to the relationship. And I'm happy to report now he has since happily remarried. And I see his own growth. I see his own relationship that seems like a much better fit for him. And now, of course, my children have a stepmother that they love, who loves them back. And so for me, it was kind of the pie in the sky where he got to move on for a relationship that works better for him. I'm now in a new relationship that works better for me. And my kids now have 4 parental figures that love them fiercely. And so even though our family looks different, it's working. And everybody gets to be their authentic selves. My kids are no longer walking on eggshells around the two of us. And even my kids at the time, they were 7 and 9. They knew. They felt in their bones that things weren't correct.
Yeah.
I actually just had a conversation with my daughter the other day. We were taking one of our favorite hikes in town. I know you know Lover's Loop, Leanne.
Oh, yeah.
We were there, and we visited one of the trees that we've been visiting for years. And she remembers visiting this particular tree when her dad and I were still together. So she has this long history with this tree. And she made a comment about taking that hike when we were all still a family of 4. And so it opened up an opportunity for me to ask her, does it still hurt a little bit that your dad and I aren't together? And she thought about it and she said, yes, it does. It still hurts sometimes, but I really like and see the two of you are happy now. And I like the way our life is now. And for her, it was as simple as that. She knew, she understood that things weren't right. And while it still hurts her, and of course it always will, she loves seeing both of her parents happy and aligned and their true selves. And now she has 2 examples of loving, supportive, connected relationships. And for me, that is a win.
That's everything. That is truly everything. Not everybody has that on the other side, but
no, that's true.
Wow, to exemplify what it is to prioritize your own happiness is extremely powerful to show our children. That was a huge motivator for me was, okay, well, we could stay together and be miserable, and our kids can say, my parents made it.
Yeah.
Or I can arrive to my life every day as a whole person seeking equal partnership and to be seen and to not feel lonely in a marriage and all of these things that were happening, and have that be a beautiful example of self-advocacy, no matter how the outcome is. And I think with kids, if we could just talk another minute about kids.
Of course.
you have 2, I have 3.
I do.
And so we're really understanding the impact of our decisions on our young family members and how protective we are as parents of their well-being. But I will say that to have discord in the home, if I speak from personal experience growing up, discord in the home, I remember saying to my mom, will you guys just get divorced already? Because I could not stand the discord. I was feeling it in my bones and in my flesh. And I was like, I'd rather you guys didn't live together so that we could just have some peace. And there's something about that resolution for kids to feel your peace, to feel the calm, no matter what the configuration of the family is, right?
Right. And kids know from the very beginning what is safe and what is not.
Yeah.
And if their home is not a safe space for their parents, it's not a safe space for them either. And they feel it. Yeah. And for me, that was hard. It was definitely hard to know that my decision was going to lead to a breakup of our family. But I just had to have faith that it would work out and that they would find that safety and that rhythm again. And not only that, but they watched both their parents go through this difficult, hard thing and come out the other side. They watched both of their parents show up for them together. We were still on their team. Even though we weren't in a relationship anymore, we made sure we were on their team. And they saw that. Wow. And to me, that is a great example for them to learn that life doesn't always work out. And sometimes you have to go through the hard thing, but you just have to keep going. You just have to keep going because chances are good it'll resolve, it'll work out. And if you keep showing up, you'll get there. Yeah. And so I think for them, they feel much more secure now. And I see I see how easy it is now for them to make those transitions and for them to speak up. If they're missing me, they give me a call. If they're missing their dad, they give him a call. There's no there's no competition there as to who's the better parent. And for them, I think they really feel supported.
Beautiful. I love that self-compassion that you were talking about, just having this sense of, grace for yourself. I'm wondering if we could pivot and talk about grief in the process, because sometimes the grief of a relationship evolving or ending or going through difficulty gets stuck there because we're so caught up in judging ourselves or our partner or our circumstances about where we are. And could you talk about the importance of grief and actually allowing grief as a process, not as
Yeah,
a way of being, right? Because a lot of times
right.
that's grief can get stuck and then there we are, just eternally grieving. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the power of grief and the role of grief in this process.
Yeah, grief does play a big role. And it's a little bit different than grieving somebody who's died, because now you have to grieve the end of a marriage, the person that was probably the most important person to you, but you still see them. You still have to negotiate a settlement with them. And if you're a parent, you're still going to see them once or twice a week. And so you have to grieve somebody who's still there right in front of you. And so it's a little bit of a different animal, the grief that comes with a major breakup or a divorce. And allowing that grief to unfold. They talk about the stages of grief, and whether you buy into those stages of grief or not, there is a natural arc, and it's not a linear A to B. You're not going to be completely broken and then one day healed. Sometimes you're relieved and happy, and other times you're down in the muck and you're struggling to even get out of bed, and that can change day to day, minute to minute. So letting that grief come, letting the emotions come, taking a look at them, and that's where mindfulness comes in, because mindfulness really allows you to look at all of the stuff that's surfacing for you without judgment. It allows you to watch the waves of emotion that are coming and going, and just let them pass by, and allows you to sit in your grief and say, I see you, I feel you, I'm here, and then let it pass by so you can get back to your life. And it kind of comes in waves like that. It's going to be with you for a while, depending on your own process. And so kind of strapping your seatbelt in and understand strapping on your seatbelt and understanding that grief is going to be your companion for a little while, but there's a purpose to it. The purpose of grief is to show you what you've lost. It's to show you the beauty of your life. It's to be the counterpoint between the highs and the lows, because we don't feel the highs without the lows. And so to show you what's happening in your life, it allows you to accept where you are. That's really difficult, that acceptance, but it's part of the process. We don't get to our better next chapter without accepting it, without accepting what we've lost, without accepting our role in how we lost it, and without accepting that this is our reality now, and it's going to be up to us to rebuild our lives piece by piece. That's what grief is there to show you, that you have a little bit of work to do, but it's worth it. It's always worth it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. I love that so much. When we are navigating through, let's say, I'd love to take you back maybe to the person who's at the beginning stages still,
Mm-hmm.
and is like, who has time for this? And what, I don't know what I'm getting myself into. I'm wondering if you could talk about, we kind of are familiar with attorneys and what role they play in a divorce. And that can be a really intimidating phone call for somebody to take, especially if they don't know if they're ready for it. I'm putting myself in the shoes of the person who's like, I'm not even sure I actually want this, but I need to ask questions. And you just get a sense that the attorney is not the place to start. I imagine that's where mediation comes in. And I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about the ins and outs of mediation and how much handholding you do, and how much, when grief comes up, that you're there to help navigate that too, or not. Like, what is the if you
Yeah,
could kind of paint a picture of what mediation looks like as opposed to hiring an attorney.
right. So maybe it's best to start with kind of what the roles are among the divorce professionals. Whose role is what? The attorney is not there to be your therapist. They're not there to walk you through the emotions. They are there to file your paperwork, to negotiate for your best interests, and to get you what you are legally entitled to under the law, which may or may not be fair. But they are there to advocate for you if you can't advocate for yourself. But they're not there to hold your hand. They are very busy. They have a specific job to do. And so a lot of times you feel like you might hire an attorney and then they just disappear for a while. Well, they've got dozens of other cases. And so when you're working with an attorney, you have to be very efficient. You have to come prepared. You have to know what your questions are. And you have to kind of find the attorney that's going to be the right fit for you. So if you are expecting a contentious divorce, you might need more of a fighter. But if you think that you can be amicable, you might need more of a collaborative attorney that's geared towards settlement, not fighting. The mediator's role is a little bit different. So, a mediator is a neutral third party, and you can mediate your case with or without attorneys. I usually prefer, as a mediator, to mediate with my clients before they hire attorneys, or alternatively, they'll have an attorney that's kind of waiting in the wings, but they're not there in mediation with us. The attorney is going to be there to check out maybe some tax issues, to make sure that I've dotted all my I's, crossed all my T's, and make sure that I'm not missing anything, but not to throw a grenade into this process. So what the mediator does as a neutral, they're not advocating for one or the other. What they're doing is trying to facilitate the two of the husband and the wife, or in a queer marriage, the two parties. They're trying to facilitate those two spouses coming together to an agreement that's in both of their best interests. And that means there's going to be give and take. That means you need to know what your trade-offs are. You need to come prepared. You need to understand what the finances are. The mediator's role is not going to be necessarily to get down in the nitty-gritty with you, but to bring you through all of the things that need to be in a settlement agreement so it then gets approved by the judge and you get your judgment. So a parenting plan, the division of assets, the division of debts, and making sure that spousal support and child support are fair and covered under the law if you're entitled to those things. But the mediator is, again, not necessarily going to be holding your hand. That's where a coach comes in. So a coach is not going to have this attorney-client privilege relationship with you, but it is a confidential relationship where you can talk about what you're worried about, whether you want to decide how to keep the house, can you afford the house? The coach might get into the finances with you to help you put together your budget so you can decide what you need on the other side of divorce, so you can kind of know a little bit what you might be entitled to, what is probably going to be out of bounds, to manage your expectations, to help you deal with the conflict. So the coach is kind of your confidant or your consigliere, if you like mafia movies. They're the person that they hold space for you. So if you just need to say, oh my gosh, my ex is driving me crazy and I need to tell you why, that's what a coach is for. But also a coach will help you walk through some of these negotiation pieces so you can get to that settlement. So those are kind of the roles of the three main divorce professionals. There's also something called a certified divorce financial analyst. That is a financial person. So if you have some complicated family businesses, properties, things like that, you can either use a forensic accountant or one of these CDFAs, and they can help you sort of discern what your financial picture looks like for divorce. So there's other professionals that you can bring in along the way. But those are the main components of your team that you might need to seek help from to get you through the divorce.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. That reminded me of a dear friend of mine that was going through divorce. And she realized it's probably a couple months in, that she needed that third party person because she's like, I think I'm going to really quickly burn through my friendships if I'm not careful. Because
Yes.
that desperate call of, and do you know what he said and whatnot. And first of all, she didn't want to tarnish our relationship with the husband because there was still a friendship. But also because she's like, I just need another place to put this. I'll call you for certain things, but I need the bulk of the big heat to go to somebody that I've hired and who is there for that. That's what they've signed up for. And I thought that was
Right.
such a wise way to move. at that early stage, when there's so much confusion, and you do need to talk it through. You do want to talk about, because you're confused and you're overwhelmed and all of the emotions are up.
Right.
And then the
That's a
grief kicks
really
in and everything. Yeah.
That's a really important point because chances are good you're going to be in your divorce process for at least 6 months because we have a mandatory 6-month waiting period if you're in California, like we are. But oftentimes it's going to be 12 to 18 months, depending on how contentious it is and how many issues you need to sort through. And so your friends, they do get tired. There's only so much that they can listen to the day in and the day out. He said this, my attorney wants me to do that. And also your friends aren't going to give you the best advice anyway. They might be a listening ear, but they don't know what they're doing either unless they've been through it. And then they only have that one experience. So your friends, they can be a support mechanism for you, but they shouldn't be your primary support person because one, you'll burn through them really quickly. They're not going to want to hear you for 6 months complaining. And two, it really is better to review your options and talk through it with a trained professional. Yeah. And then the third thing is you don't know how those friendships are going to shake out. You don't know which friends are going to side with you, which friends are going to side with your ex, or if they're uncomfortable choosing a side, or if you don't want to force them to choose a side, and many of us don't, they need to make those decisions for themselves. Yeah. And so a lot of times the instinct is that we need to get defensive. We need to plead our case. We need to tell our friends why our ex was so miserable and why we deserve this or that. But that might be uncomfortable for them, especially if they have a relationship with your ex. And it's hard to put people like that in a position. You don't want to. So there's a number of reasons why you really want your confidant to be a coach or a therapist and not your friends, because they just don't have the bandwidth to help you through this.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Having the team to get you through it and knowing what roles everybody plays is really important, because it does go on. I was surprised. I've been surprised a couple of times actually at how long, even in an amicable situation, how long it goes on for. There's just so many parts of it to pull apart and to make decisions on. And I'm also amazed at how the decisions and what seems best changes as the time rolls on. So what felt true at the very beginning wasn't actually true at the end. There was a completely different resolution that came about. And I was really fascinated by that process of allowing the best outcome to come through as opposed to the one that you decide is how it should be. It's really interesting. The team. Yes,
there is a natural evolution. And a lot of times I see with my clients, the women especially, they come into it saying, I just want to keep the house. I just want to keep the house and I want to keep it in the school district for my children. And that's all I need. And by the time we get to the end of it, they might realize the house is too big for them. They can't afford it. Maybe they need something more manageable, or maybe they're holding on to it for reasons that they don't need. Yeah. And so a lot of times they might start somewhere and end up in a completely different location. And that's another reason why not to vacillate on these issues with your friends, because they're going to be on this roller coaster ride with you. And where you start is not going to be where you end up. And that's going to be confusing for everybody.
Yeah, and friendships tend to want to advocate for the person that they love and defend them and ride the wave of all of the things that you're feeling. And so bad advice is really common in those scenarios. It's like, you just need to call him and tell him, or you just need to call her and tell her. And it's like, no, you don't do it. Right.
And then sometimes you might go through some doubts, like, do I really want to do this? And now you spent the last 6 months bad-mouthing your ex to all your friends. And now all of a sudden you're like, wait, maybe I want to go back to them. And so, so sorting through all of those conflicting feelings outside of your friendships is usually the wisest thing to do.
I love it. Wait, let's talk about that for one hot second. So people change their mind.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times you might call the divorce attorney or the divorce coach early on, and then you'll sit on it for a number of months. You really, to get through this, you really need to build up your strength and your resilience, and you need to get a running start, because once you start down the process, you're in it for a while. And so there might be some stops and starts. I get calls from people all the time. And we walk through a free consultation. I kind of tell them a little bit about what to expect. We go over some options, and then I don't hear from them for months. And sometimes I'll think, okay, maybe they've reconciled. And then maybe 6 months later, I'll get the call and say, I'm ready now. I'm ready now.
Yeah.
And so it's not a linear process. And for everybody, it's different.
Yeah, that's such an important thing to keep in mind, is it really does look different for everybody, just like our lives, just like everything about our lives, not the same as anybody else.
Right.
This is really beautiful. What a helpful conversation for anybody in it or considering it or maybe almost on the other side of it. Just so much hope here that you've provided us. It's been really, really a gift. If we want to learn more about the services you offer, your app, or a way to get in touch with you, can you let us know how to find you?
Sure. So the app is at divorcewave.com. And through the website, you can check out the free content. There's a lot of good free content on there, such as journaling, guided journaling. It gives you more information about what the app is. And then, of course, there's that free 5-minute wave. So when you get that angry text, you can check it out. That's divorcewave.com. My personal practice is truceresolutions.com, and that's where I handle my divorce consulting and coaching and mediation. I am a licensed attorney, but I am not practicing as a divorce attorney right now because I really do prefer mediating and coaching clients as opposed to litigation where people are just fighting. So while I am a licensed attorney and I can draw on my knowledge, I am just a mediator and a divorce consultant and an app developer.
Not just, my friend, that's a lot, and you are doing beautifully at it. It's really been such a treasure to watch you
Thank you.
really offer and put your gifts out into the world so that others can benefit from it. And this is just an incredible service you're offering. So on
Thank
behalf
you.
of so many people, thank you.
It was my own divorce that led me to this
Yeah.
second act. So it was one of the gifts that I was able to find in divorce. And I hope your listeners find their own gifts.
Yes, me too. Me too. Well, I hope to have you back sometime. Until then, thank you so much, and we'll talk again soon.
We will. Thank you, Leanne.
My pleasure.